In the mist-shrouded village of Alder Hollow, whispers of the Headless Nun haunted the town like a lingering curse. Children grew up on terrifying tales of her roaming the outskirts in the dead of night, searching for vengeance, her habit still pristine, but her head gone. Some claimed they had seen her gliding through the fog, her ghostly form casting no shadow, and if you were too close, you'd hear the faint weeping of a woman betrayed. Among these villagers was a girl named Lena, a troubled teenager who never paid attention to the old superstitions. She had enough real problems to deal with: a broken home, a mother who had vanished without a trace years ago, and a life teetering on the edge of danger. Her new friend, Damian, a local gangster, offered her quick escapes from her harsh reality: drugs, parties, and the illusion of safety. But Lena didn't know that Damian had a darker side, and tonight, that darkness would reveal itself. The night air was thick with humidity, and the village felt quieter than usual. Lena found herself alone with Damian in the abandoned churchyard. His face, once friendly, had twisted into something menacing.
I told you, Lena, you're not leaving until I get what I want.
Damian growled, his eyes gleaming under the pale moonlight. Fear gripped Lena as she realized her situation had spiraled out of control. She tried to pull away, but Damian's grip tightened around her arm like a vice. Suddenly the temperature dropped, and an eerie wind swept through the graveyard, rustling the leaves and shaking the old iron gates. The moonlight dimmed as if something was blocking its glow. A strange silence followed, so oppressive that it pressed against their ears like a scream waiting to erupt. Damian froze, his eyes widening in terror as something moved in the shadows beyond the graves. At first, it was nothing more than a flutter of movement, like a dark cloth blowing in the wind. But then, emerging from the thick fog, she appeared, the Headless Nun. Her habit billowed in the wind, and her body floated above the ground as if carried by invisible hands. Her missing head should have made her terrifyingly incomplete, but the sight of her was overwhelming. Though she had no eyes, it felt like her gaze pierced through them. Damian stumbled backward, his voice trembling.
What the hell, what is that thing?
Lena, her heart racing, stood frozen. There was no sound except for the soft swish of the nun's habit. The ghostly figure hovered, then turned towards Damian. He let out a strangled scream and ran into the darkness, leaving Lena alone in the nun's presence. Terrified, Lena fell to her knees.
Please, don't hurt me.
She whispered, unsure if the spirit could even hear her, but instead of approaching her menacingly, the nun reached out, her hand glowing faintly in the moonlight. A wave of calm washed over Lena, and the fear that had consumed her just moments before faded. The nun's ethereal hand touched Lena's shoulder. And in that brief moment of contact, memories flooded Lena's mind. She saw flashes of a life long forgotten, a beautiful young woman dressed in a nun's habit, laughing in the fields with a kind-eyed man. That woman was the nun, but in life, she had been someone else. She had loved, and she had fallen pregnant. But the village had been cruel. Her devout family, horrified by the scandal, had taken matters into their own hands. They had murdered her in cold blood, hiding her shame under the guise of protecting their reputation. Lena gasped as the final memory clicked into place. The nun was her mother. The truth was unbearable. Her mother hadn't abandoned her as everyone believed. She had been taken from her life snuffed out by those who should have protected her. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she whispered,
You are my mother, aren't you?
The nun's form shimmered, her body trembling as though acknowledging the truth. Lena felt an overwhelming sadness, but also an unshakable sense of peace. The Headless Nun had been wandering for years, looking for her lost daughter, searching for the chance to protect her from the dangers of the world, dangers like Damian. Lena wept, understanding now that the spirit hadn't come for vengeance, but for justice, and to keep her child safe. The nun's hand rested on Lena's shoulder a moment longer before the ghostly figure began to fade into the fog. Just as the nun disappeared completely, a faint whisper drifted through the air, like a prayer carried on the wind.
I love you, my daughter.
Lena stood alone in the churchyard, but no longer afraid. The legend of the Headless Nun had changed forever in her eyes. Now, it was no longer a tale of horror, but of a mother's eternal love. From that day on, the sightings of the Headless Nun ceased. But Lena knew whenever she walked through the village at night that her mother's spirit was still there, watching over her, her protector from beyond the grave.